Roswell, 1947. Ranking as one of the most famous UFO incidents in history, and now a pop culture phenomenon, the Roswell incident saw UFO hunters claim that the U.S. military had captured an alien aircraft, while the military maintained that the flying saucer was actually a surveillance device from a classified operation. Non-believers still cite extraterrestrial activity to this day. Berwyn Mountains, 1974. Like the Roswell incident 27 years earlier, rumors of a UFO crash in the Berwyn Mountains followed after reports of shaking ground and strange lights in the sky. Investigations began, and Gwynedd police recorded a statement from a witness, who claimed to have seen a bright red light, like coal fire red, large perfect circle, like a big bonfire, could see lights above, and to the right and white lights moving to bottom. Light changed color to yellowish white and back again. No remains were found, and the unsteady ground was likely to have been caused by the Bala earthquake, which hit the area that night, but several locals still insist they saw a glowing, egg-shaped craft. Lubbock Lights, 1951. The Lubbock Lights were an unusual formation of lights seen over the city of Lubbock, Texas, from August to September 1951. The Lubbock Lights incident received national publicity, and is regarded as one of the first great UFO cases in the United States. The Lubbock Lights were investigated by the U.S. Air Force in 1951, which initially believed they were caused by a type of bird called a plover, but eventually concluded that the lights weren't birds, but they weren't spaceships. They have been positively identified as a very commonplace and easily explainable natural phenomenon. However, to maintain the anonymity of the scientist who had provided the explanation, the Air Force refrained from providing any details regarding their explanation for the lights. Shag Harbor, 1967. On the night of October 4, 1967, at about 11:20 p.m. Atlantic Daylight Time, it was reported that something had crashed into the waters of Shag Harbor, Nova Scotia. At least 11 people saw a low-flying lit object head towards the harbor. Multiple witnesses reported hearing a whistling sound like a bomb, then a whoosh, and finally a loud bang. The object was never officially identified, and was therefore referred to as an unidentified flying object in Government of Canada documents. The Canadian military became involved in a subsequent rescue recovery effort. The initial report was made by local resident Laurie Wickens and 4 of his friends. Driving through Shag Harbor, Nova Scotia, on Highway 3, they spotted a large object descending into the waters off the harbor. Attaining a better vantage point, Wickens and his friends saw an object floating 250 meters to 300 meters offshore in the waters of Shag Harbor, Atlantic Ocean, Nova Scotia. Wickens contacted the RCMP detachment in Barrington Passage, and reported he had seen a large airplane or small airliner crash into the waters off Shag Harbor, Nova Scotia. Rendlesham Forest Lights, 1980. One of the UK's most famous UFO events involved the sighting of several unexplained lights near RAF bases at Rendlesham Forest, inland of the Suffolk coast. The authorities insist there was nothing mysterious going on, and no risk to national security. However, as the witnesses were on-duty servicemen, the reports were given a measure of credibility, and a belief persists that the lights were from an alien spacecraft. Even now, requests for more details are still being made under the Freedom of Information Act. Rendlesham Forest incident. Few conspiracy theories are as strongly corroborated as England's Roswell. There are more witnesses to this event than the Roswell incident. On December 26, 1980, at 3 a.m., an unidentified object was reported by a security patrol near East Gate of RAF Woodbridge. Servicemen initially thought it was a downed aircraft, but upon entering the forest to investigate, they saw strange lights moving through the trees as well as a bright light from an unidentified object. Minville incident, in Oregon. In May of 1950, a farmer named Mr. Trent saw a UFO at his farm outside Minville. According to Mr. Trent, his wife Eveline first spotted the object, a silvery, metallic disc. She was outside feeding her rabbits when it appeared in the early evening sky. She called out to her husband, who came outside and watched for a couple of minutes. He then went and got a camera, and took 2 pictures before the object sped off to the west. The most striking thing lending credence to the story is the Trent's behavior. They never made any money off the photographs, and actually had to be convinced to let them be published by a local reporter. Apparently, they were afraid of getting into trouble with the government. Mariana Incident. In 1950, on the night of August 15, minor league baseball manager Nick Mariana became the first person to capture film footage of a UFO. It happened as he was inspecting the diamond before a game in Great Falls, Montana, which has since become a hotbed of UFO sightings, and is close to a U.S. Air Force base. Mariana was able to capture 2 bright dots streaking across the sky on his 16mm movie camera, which he says he routinely kept in his car. After sending the film to be developed, he began to contact local newspapers, significant, as he had not yet seen the developed film and so would not have known if any fakery looked convincing. In October, he wrote a letter to the Air Force and was interviewed at Malmstrom Air Force Base. After examining the film, the Air Force concluded possible aircraft and dropped it. While 2 fighters were on record as having landed at Malmstrom at around the time of the sighting, Mariana insisted that he saw those, too, in a different part of the sky. He also claimed that upon his film's return, several frames that showed the spinning discs more clearly were missing, presumably cut by the Air Force. While the debate has never been resolved, the incident kicked off decades of over 100 sightings in Great Falls, and prompted the renaming of the minor league baseball team to the Voyagers. Chicago O'Hare Incident. When several people state flatly that they observed a saucer-shaped aircraft hovering around before bolting into the sky at incredible speeds, it is tempting to assume that they don't know much about aircraft. But when just such an incident occurred in Chicago in 2006, it was pretty difficult to make that case. It took place at O'Hare International Airport, and most of the people who saw it were United Airlines employees. No airline officials, air traffic controllers, or radar records indicated anything out of the ordinary, though a United supervisor did call the tower to ask if any saucers were hovering nearby. The FAA has declined to investigate, which has proved irritating to those who insist that they witnessed the incident. Officials have tossed out the usual balloons, optical illusions, and weather phenomena as possible explanations. As for the witnesses, they counter that none of those could explain the hole that the craft punched in the clouds while making its quick ascent, which lingered for several minutes. All witnesses agreed that the craft was dark gray, didn't have any lights or markings, and maintained its position steadily before blasting off. Edwards Air Force Base sighting. One can't blame the U.S. Air Force for being sensitive about matters involving UFOs. In 1957, one supposedly landed at Edwards Air Force Base. If that sounds like an insane myth, keep in mind that it was allegedly caught on film and was reported by Gordon Cooper, a test pilot and astronaut in the United States' first manned space program. He was at Edwards supervising the installation of a new precision landing system at the time, and his account of the incident was pretty unambiguous. "I had a camera crew filming the installation when they spotted a saucer. They filmed it as it flew overhead, then hovered, extended 3 legs as a landing gear, and slowly came down to land on a dry lake bed. These guys were all pro cameramen, so the picture quality was very good. The camera crew managed to get within 20 or 30 yards of it, filming all the time. It was a classic saucer, shiny silver and smooth, about 30 feet across. It was pretty clear it was an alien craft. As they approached closer, it took off." Socro encounter. On April 24, 1964, several witnesses in different parts of Socro, New Mexico, reported different sightings of the same event. Some saw a low flying object in the sky. Some heard loud sounds reminiscent of the takeoff and landing of a powerful craft, but one man swears he actually saw it land and that it could only have been an alien spacecraft. His name was Lonnie Zamora, and it was such an astonishing encounter that it distracted him from the high-speed chase he had been engaged in when he first caught sight of the craft. At the time of the sighting, Mr. Zamora was an on-duty SOCRO police officer. What grabbed Officer Zamora's attention was a gigantic cone of blue light rising thousands of feet into the air, which he took to be flames. Abandoning his pursuit, he went in the direction of what was presumably a crash or a miner's shack explosion, and that was when his day got really intense. He spotted a vehicle in a gully, then two small humanoids glimpsed from the corner of his eye seemed to jump at his approach before disappearing. He parked the vehicle and got out, then heard a series of metallic clangs coming from the gully. The source was a huge, metallic oval object standing on girder-like legs. Immediately, a bluish flame shot out of the bottom of the vehicle, and it rose before taking off quickly and silently, vanishing into the distance as the officer got on his radio to report what he had just seen.